Tony, welcome to Beyond the Inbox. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you about email automation, email marketing.
Me too. I want to start by asking you about your background. What inspired you to leave your job in finance and join the e-commerce world with your first startup?
Yeah, so that's a long journey. Goes way back. So before, like you mentioned, I joined the world in e-commerce. Got a degree in finance. Did that for about 10 years or so, working in private banking, asset management. And during that time period, I just missed building things with my hands. Oddly enough. And so I started building these wooden canoes and wooden paddle boards in my garage. People started reaching out to ask me to buy them and put up a website on Squarespace. And lo and behold, I was off to the races in e-commerce. That business grew, changed a lot over the years, but that's kind of how I weaseled my way into the e-commerce world.
One thing I wanted to ask you is actually, let me run up to this in another way. I was really looking forward to speaking to you because most people that I have on the show are either e-commerce founders where they started by scratching their own itch or they are employees of a larger company. Your background is very interesting in that you bought Timbervault. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what that experience was like.
Yeah, it was fairly interesting. Like I mentioned, I had the other e-commerce business before Timbervaults came along. It was in a little bit of a different niche. It's in outdoor recreational products. So people that want to build their own kayaks, paddleboards, that sort of thing. Um, and it just felt that that business probably, at least I felt that I had taken it as far as I could grow it. I saw Timbervaults, the previous owner of that, reached out to a buddy of mine that was on a podcast and asked if he wanted to buy it. It wasn't a good fit for my buddy at the time. My buddy knew that I was interested in acquiring something that had maybe a little bit more of a growth ceiling, and just started kicking the tires on Timber Vaults and yeah, pulled the trigger on it. You asked about the experience there. I think it was fairly quick. The beautiful thing about e-commerce businesses, especially when the inventories held at a 3PL, is you get fairly good transparency. It's easy to get your hands and head around the numbers in the business of what's actually taking place. And so, you talk to the manufacturer, look at Google Analytics, look at the sales data in Magento or Shopify. And, it's fairly hard to sort of game those and you're able to, back into what the business is worth essentially to you.
One thing you mentioned in our pre-interview, and this is something that you mentioned in another interview as well, which I thought was quite fascinating. You said that you didn't realize the issue with advertising gun products on many platforms. And I wanted to ask you about that. And is that something that you are actively trying to work around, or is that something that you've realized that you can't move forward on at this point?
Yeah, so for people that maybe don't know what Timber Vaults is, I think maybe it would make sense to preface what it is, and that'll help inform and answer that question regarding the gun products. But Timber Vaults essentially sells concealment furniture, and you can think of it as either a mirror or a shelf that you have on your wall. We're adding some additional products in the future, but those are the two staples that we have now. And inside of that shelf is effectively a hollow space or a void, and that can only be accessed by either the Bluetooth or RFID card access electronic lock that's in or inside the shelf. And so you think of it, you pull up your phone or swipe your key card in a specific place on the shelf, and out pops a basically space that you can store something. The business when I purchased it was primarily marketed towards the gun niche, and people that want to store their guns properly, but also want to maintain fast access to them in the event of, unfortunate event of home intrusion or something like that. So that's kind of the idea behind the business. I like it and find it appealing, largely because in America we have a little bit of a problem of people just don't store their firearms properly, regardless of how you feel about them. There's millions of guns in public people's hands in the US. And unfortunately, a lot of people just, store them under their mattress or in a nightstand or, in a shelf, next to their couch. And as you can imagine, that creates a tremendous number of problems of, kids that may inadvertently gain access to their firearms. A robber breaks in, it's an easy target for them to just open the shelf and there's a gun. So there's a really big problem, and that's kind of the idea behind the business when I purchased it. That's sort of a long, rambling way to get back and answer your question, but I think it's important to, to highlight what the product is a little bit. So when I purchased the business, I did my due diligence, looked at some of the larger platforms, Meta, for example, and they explicitly say that you cannot advertise firearms, clearly. Totally okay with that. But they also explicitly say that you can advertise things like gun safes, gun locks. But what we found is when you go to advertise our product, because the website mentions gun in it and we show guns inside the shelf as a storage solution, the algorithm at those platforms automatically reject our ads, and we're able to appeal those, and 50% of the time it gets approved. But it becomes impossible to effectively A/B test and iterate and build ads that work correctly. And so even though we are explicitly allowed to advertise our product, we feel like we're providing a valid service in the interest of public safety. It just is impossible for us to reach and engage with our targeted audience via those platforms.
Are there any creative ways that you've looked at overriding that in terms of, I know you mentioned you can't show pictures with the gun. Are there any ways around that? What are some of the other brand or some of your competitors doing, if that's something that you've considered?
Sure, we went down a interesting rabbit hole of just testing that and talking to the Facebook ad reps and trying to figure out what we could do. Inside the shelf, there's effectively a foam insert that the customer, when they gets it, they cut it out to the shape of their gun. Or I want to say real quick, it doesn't have to be a gun. It could be jewelry. It could be, documents. It could be whatever items that people store. But in any event, there's a foam insert in there. And what we tried to do is take all of the guns out of our marketing in Facebook and just create like an outline of a gun where it would sit in the foam. So it's just a black space roughly in the shape of like a toy gun. And even those got rejected. So I'm sure there's a way. We just haven't cracked the code on it. And, we feel that there's other low hanging fruit and opportunities to engage and interact with our customers outside of the traditional Facebook marketing platform. Um, and so we just have placed that on pause for now and spend those ad dollars elsewhere. In terms of our competitors, what we've seen some of them doing um, broadly in the gun space is there's quote unquote gun influencers out there that they just pay them to basically create a video of them shooting their gun and post it on their personal channel. It's quite fascinating. I didn't know that world existed, but it does. Um, and so that we've seen that working for some gun related brands out there. We have not done that, but maybe that's something we explore in the future. But that's a big way that brands reach new audiences.
I want to come back to some of those low hanging fruits in a moment, but I'm so curious, as someone going into this industry, was there a lot that you had to learn, or is this something that you're learning as you go along?
You mean learning about the gun industry or learning
Yeah,
about the nuances of marketing?
the gun
That
industry in general, like you mentioned, you didn't know there were gun influencers. I didn't know there were gun influencers either. I'm really curious how you're informing yourself and the marketing that you're doing as you're going along.
Sure. It's interesting. I myself, I grew up in Texas, so I did grow up around guns, primarily used for hunting. And so we would go out and, shoot bird with shotgun or, do rifles or whatever. And it was kind of a father son activity. And that's sort of my world in the gun space. I currently am a gun owner and still do hunt and, find that's just a way to connect with nature and a tradition that has its some people have different qualms about it, but there's something about going out and harvesting an animal that you then have to process and you have a lot more respect for the animal than just going and buying some ground beef on the shelf that is just a nameless cow, and you don't even think of it as a cow. You just think of like a beef link or whatever. So I would preface it by say I am a gun owner and do hunt and use guns in that capacity. However, there's a whole different world out there of people that primarily use guns for think of it for self protection and yeah, I'm just educating myself in that world by just digging in and seeing what's out there, looking at some of the YouTube videos, the creative that's out there, subscribing to email lists for I won't say competitors, but adjacent brands, if you will. And just really diving into the industry and learning about how firearms manufacturers and firearms accessories brands market their products. And it's been quite fascinating.
It is interesting when you mention about the history behind certain states. And I live in Sweden, and most gun owners I know are very much the type of gun owners you're describing, where they hunt once or twice a year and they bring home whatever they shoot. And I think that's a really interesting facet to what it is that you're doing. I'm curious, do you have data on your customers to see what states are most popular in terms of? I'm just curious if there's any correlation between gun ownership in certain states and certain types of customers. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, we've done some customer surveys as well as, obviously I have Google Analytics data set up. And it may surprise people where people are buying our concealment furniture. Um, Again, we don't have transparency into what the end user is storing in them. The assumption is that it's a firearm, but we know with certainty that that's not always the case. Um, some might think that you would see the majority of these being purchased in rural, really gun-friendly states, but we see um, a lot of the volume going to higher density, larger cities that may have higher crime type problems in their states. Um, and so that leads me to believe that a large percentage of these customers that are buying them are using them in the capacity of just, fear around personal safety and self protection. And that gun owner completely may have a valid point if they're in a high crime environment. And they want to be a responsible gun owner and both store their guns safely so that it restricts access to other family members and intruders in their home, but they also want to maintain quick access in the event they do have, a home intrusion or something.
I think this is a good segue to ask something that you mentioned in another interview. You said, I plan on two brands selling the same product. There's Timber Vault's focus on guns, then there's an everything else category. I wanted to ask you, how is that going for you with the everything else category, and what's the update on that?
Yeah, so the everything else category is, when I bought this brand, one of the things that I saw as a tremendous opportunity is it's a really cool product. I mean, it's almost like a something James Bond would have in his house. Um, but again, it was specifically marketed towards the gun niche. I see a large, I think a lot of homeowners or renters, whatever, but people have items in their house that they just don't want visibly out and about, that maybe they want to store safely. And the thinking and idea there is to create a separate brand that markets to the non gun owner niche that wants to store whatever item that may be. Could be, prescription medication. It could be, recreational substances. It could be, passports, jewelry. Um, it could be adult toys, whatever it is, things that you just, other novelty, just things that you don't want your neighbor to come over and say, "What the hell is that on your coffee table?" But you maybe want access to it. And so we do plan on launching that brand. We've been rebuilding our supply chain to sort of prepare and be able to meet that demand as it comes online. Um, and so that will be launching later this year, but we have not officially made that public and launched that yet, but it's definitely coming.
We've talked already about Facebook, and one thing I wanted to ask you about, or rather something that came up in our pre-interview, which I thought was very interesting, was you talking about how you're using Ahrefs to build links and how SEO is a big marketing channel for you. I put the website in Ahrefs before this interview and saw some really interesting keywords that you're ranking for, and these were very much high search volume, low keyword difficulty keywords. And I wanted to ask you, are you actively going after some of these keywords? I won't mention what they are just in case some of your competitors are listening. Or are you ranking organically at this point for some of these keywords?
Um, yeah, so we just looking for new channels to reach new customers, just started going out and seeing what the keyword difficulty is, high volume, low difficulty rank, and we just started creating blog content around those to try to target that and get that inbound traffic into our website. And I'm very grateful that we're starting to see meaningful traffic from that, and real results in terms of revenue on the brand. And so we are actively positioning ourselves to target some of those keywords, and we'll continue to blog and create content around that, as well as do backlink outreach, and sort of bolster our presence on the web and bring more of that inbound traffic in.
What backlink building strategy is working most well for you right now?
I am not an expert in that field at all. There's someone on my team that helps out with that. But what we have been doing is reaching out to other accessory brands that we just find out there. It could be we find them via podcast. It could be just a product that we come across and we just reach out and say, "This is a really cool product. This is what we're doing. This is what you're doing. Would you be interested in, creating a blog post about us?" We'll even ghostwrite the blog post, and in exchange, we'll do the exact same thing. And we'll even do once a quarter or once every 6 weeks, just sort of our favorite brands, blog post or email blast and sort of get you some traffic. It doesn't really cost us anything other than time. And we've seen that, just doing that manually has yielded results for us.
When you're writing blog posts on the website and you're targeting some of these keywords that we talked about here, is the conversion goal to capture those visitors and convert them into email subscribers, or are you going for a one-time sell right away?
Yeah, so I think it just depends on where they are in the funnel. So, if it's somebody that is aware that this product exists, which a lot of people just have never heard of this before, um, and they are searching for the specific product, obviously they're a much warmer lead. We're going and we want to capture them, um, and try to get that sale as quickly as possible because they probably have an acute need or want for the product at that point in time. Whereas others, maybe they just stumbled across it via some other keyword search or, some sort of other email blast or something that we're in. Um, and the idea there is to get that lead or get that email and be able to warm them up over time. Um, and just to educate them on the product, how it works, and to be there when they're thinking about the Father's Day gift or the Christmas gift or birthday gift, or if they're thinking about personal safety or know somebody that is. We just want to be there and be on top of brain for when that time is right for them to make that purchase.
What email automations do you have set up on the back end right now? What's working for you?
Yeah, so we do some of the standard automations, if you will, just a email pop up capture. As a user, I dislike pop-ups very much, but, as a brand owner, they work, and so we do them. Um, And so we just, capture, email there and then, just warm them up via welcome series, that sorta educates them on the product, tries to get them to look at the products, and then from there, we have other automations built out, and integrated with Shopify if, they abandon cart, say they put something in the cart and then don't purchase, that's a much warmer lead, so we're a little bit more aggressive in that, cart abandonment flow to try to get them to convert and make that purchase sooner rather than later. And then other, flows around browsing abandonment, sunset flows for if somebody that, has been in our email list, but they aren't active. They're not opening our emails. They're not visiting the website. We don't want to keep paying for those people. So we will sunset them over a period of time. Are the sort of the main core ones that we have built out.
And what about, you mentioned seasonality. I can see on the website now you have this Memorial Day sale. What kind of campaigns are you sending seasonal campaigns? Do you have a weekly newsletter that goes out? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we do have a couple weekly newsletters that we try to send. We try to send a product focused email once a week. And then we try to send once a week a non product at all related email that's effectively a educational piece of content for a gun owner. So, um, I mentioned earlier there being gun sort of influencers out there. There's a lot of YouTube sort of firearms trainers, instructors that do um, almost like a play-by-play or breakdown of what happens in an active shooter situation. It's kind of amazing, like with all the closed circuit cameras and Nest cameras and things that are out there, the amount and types of videos that are available, like out there of actual home invasions taking place. And what these firearms experts will do is break down what's happening, what the homeowner's doing, how to think about it, and so we once a week will share one of the some of that content just to sort of educate people that are in the firearms niche, so that they can be more, I guess, better gun owners and think about gun safety better. And so we try to do one product, one educational, and then a periodic um, email post around, sharing either something from our blog or other brands that we found that we're trying to, promote their backlinks.
How do you think about lifecycle marketing? Let's say someone makes a purchase within the first 30 days and they're still on your email list. What does it look like 3 to 6 months from there? Are you hoping that they will make a smaller purchase or maybe buy something for a friend? I'm curious how that factors in.
Yeah, as of right now, we don't have great add-on products, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We do have a fair number of people that go on to buy a second product. Maybe they have a second home or want one in a different location in their house, or maybe they want one for the office. Um, and so we do see a fair number of people buying more than one, but the majority of the people are coming and only buying one of the items. What we do want to work on in the future is building out a standardized sort of referral process and referral campaign, because word of mouth in these smaller niches, I think, can be one of the most powerful marketing channels. Um, and so actively sort of fanning the flames of that referral process, I think would really benefit us.
Are there any other marketing channels that are very much top of mind for you now that you would like to go more into in the future?
Yeah, so as of now, Google and YouTube, they again don't allow the promotion of guns and firearms, but they have allowed us to market our products there, and so we are spending some of those ad dollars that we had originally thought we'd be spending on Meta in the Google and YouTube worlds, and so we will continue to work on building out the funnels there, with search campaigns, and then more of the top of funnel discovery phase with YouTube campaigns. And so we will continue to spend ad dollars there, but far and away, emails sort of our best channel.
What are some of the ways that you're incorporating feedback over time as your product gets better and you have more offers? Is it you personally reading these emails? I've spoken to other founders where they're still going through the DMs and the emails and trying to glean those insights. Is that something that you're very hands on with as well?
Yeah, so we do have done some customer service surveys to ask both prospective people on our email list what's missing, what they what they want, as well as asking customers that have purchased. And um, it has informed definitely how we message and think about the product. Uh, um, excuse me. It has informed, how we message and think about the product, but it's also informed some of the product enhancements that we're rolling out now. I'm actually in a hotel now visiting a manufacturer because we're making some tweaks to the product, and so that's yeah, that's actually a very timely question.
Something
Um,
I wanted to ask you as well, just as we start to wrap up the interview, is what do you believe the future of e-commerce is in general, and how do you think Timber Vaults can stay ahead of the curve?
oh, that's a good question. I think there is increasing requirement for almost professionalization in the e-commerce world. I think it's much harder for now for just someone to just say, "Hey, I want to start selling, whatever widget is," to throw up a site, start getting traffic, and to make money at it. I think that is still possible, but I think it's just become increasingly difficult. With higher cost to acquire a customer, more systems out there. There's just a steeper learning curve. And so I think people that have been in e-commerce for some time and really know the ins and outs for a lot of these systems and can hire well and build a team around it, I think will continue to succeed and thrive. We've come off some challenging years with supply chain issues and COVID having a big ramp up, and then it really coming down in the last year with people shunning and moving away from e-commerce. But I am optimistic on the space, especially for people that are more professional in the space, or to at least think about it professionally. And Yeah, I think having brands that are sort of very niche, I think also is beneficial, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to your story, Tony, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the future of the brand and how it continues to evolve. Where can our listeners go to learn more about Timber Vaults?
Yeah, so they can head to the website. It's just timbervaults.com. And there you'll see the concealment shelves, concealment mirrors that we have, as well as some of the new products that we'll be rolling out here in the next few months. Think picture frames and things like that, chalkboards, just things that you could place in different parts of your house. But just again, timbervaults.com, and yeah, you'll see everything that we have there.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today, Tony. All the best with the manufacturer, and I look forward to seeing how the brand continues to evolve in the future.
Great, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the time.